Welcome to my review of the Sony Kit Lens. This E-mount lens is for APS-C cameras only and has an awkward filter size of 40.5mm. Its aperture reaches from 3.5 to 22. The more you zoom, the tighter the aperture becomes. For example, at 16mm the aperture wide open is f3.5, but at 50mm f5.6 is the smallest number you can get. Retail price in Europe is pretty high compared to the US, but you can get used kit lenses for around 100 euros. The diameter of this lens is just like other common APS-C E-mount lenses. It's really small when turned off and doubles its length when turned on. It's super light, which is great when you use small gimbals. The minimal focus distance varies from 2.5 to 2.3 meters, which is an average performance. The kit lens has 7 aperture blades, like all common APS-C E-mount lenses. Since this lens is a power zoom lens, you can zoom by pushing the slide button or turning the focus ring in autofocus mode. With in-camera correction set to auto, vignetting is not a big problem. But distortion at 60mm is quite pronounced despite in-camera correction. Distortion improves the more you zoom in, but is still a big weakness on that lens. Transversal chromatic aberrations that occur on high contrast edges are well controlled on that lens, but the visible ghosting is a bit scary. It improves with longer focal lengths. Color fringing in out of focus areas are called longitudinal chromatic aberrations. They are no real issue on that lens. Color accuracy is measured with a color checker in DaVinci Resolve. But keep in mind that videography is about being creative. Maybe you want a lens that produces warm colors instead of accurate colors. I tested colors at 16, 18, 24, 35 and 15mm to calculate an average value. The kit lens shows some weaknesses. To measure the general sharpness, I compared these test shots with all lenses I own. By multiplying the radius with the sharpness estimated by myself, I can calculate a certain sharpness value in percent. This is an example of how I calculate sharpness. At 60mm f3.5, sharpness is really disappointing. Corners are unusably soft. Stopping down to f5.6 improves center sharpness to a good level, but corners stay awful soft. At 18mm f3.5, the images of my test shots were devastating. I always take at least 3 test shots with manual focus. Then I select the sharpest image. But in this case, this was the sharpest image I could get. Just that you know what I mean by devastating, have a look and decide for yourself. You have to step down to f5.6 to get a bit of useful sharpness in the center of the image. At 24mm f5.6 the lens still struggles with soft corners. At 35mm corner sharpness improves a bit. At 50mm 5.6 sharpness falls apart again. Sharpness wide open at f3.5 is really bad compared to other lenses. Same applies to f5.6. Close-up sharpness is not really measured and calculated. I assess the test shots of a lens subjectively in relation to all my lenses I own. Before showing you my close-up sharpness ratings, I want to show you the test image at 60mm f3.5. Corner sharpness is just as bad as tested on the big sharpness chart. I guess the in-camera correction completely kills any corner sharpness. So don't expect better sharpness when filming close-ups. You should never shoot below f5.6 to have at least some useful center sharpness. At 24mm corner sharpness seems to be revived a bit. No improvements were visible at 35mm. At 50mm overall sharpness again falls apart. Close-up sharpness is again really bad compared to other lenses. Test results are not really overwhelming. Especially in terms of sharpness, this lens really struggles. You should never shoot below f5.6. So, in comparison to other lenses you could ask, should I dump that lens or can you do anything useful with it? Let's have a look. For filming landscapes, that lens is too soft for my sharpness demands, although I already filmed at f5.6. But as soon as I encounter portrait situations and use a longer focal length, the results are not overwhelming but okay for 1080p or YouTube. At 50mm f5.6 you can separate close subjects from the background, but if your background is too close, a wider aperture would be needed. For outside shootings with an infinite background, this lens is fun at longer focal lengths. The best lens is the one you always got with you to capture unique moments. The compactness of this lens is the reason why I take it with me when I'm traveling. So here are my final thoughts on the Kit lens. I really like the compactness of this lens. The image stabilizer is nice to have for video work. The big downside of this lens is its optical performance, especially in terms of sharpness. In low light situations, this lens is always a bad choice. And by the way, if you own a black Sony camera, don't buy the lens in silver. It just looks awful. But silver models seem to be a bit cheaper therefore.